Well, hi everyone, this is Dr. Jamnadas, and today's session is about to be a little personal. Because when people ask me how to reverse visceral fat, they usually want a trick, a food, a supplement, a shortcut. I'm going to tell you right up front, there is no trick. Visceral fat is not a cosmetic problem. It's a biological alarm system, and it's there because your metabolism has been pushed in the wrong direction for years. This video is not for you if you're here looking for a shortcut most gurus have to offer that never works. Here on this channel you will only find real science-backed information that is honest and bitter at the same time for some people. So if you think you're not delusional, consider clicking on that subscribe button and enjoy today's informative session about reversing visceral fat. Now, visceral fat is dangerous because it is metabolically active. It releases inflammatory chemicals directly into the portal vein, which drains into the liver. That is why visceral fat is tightly linked to fatty liver, insulin resistance, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and even dementia. This is not a theory, this is physiology. Subcutaneous fat, the fat under your skin, is mostly inert. Visceral fat is not. Visceral fat behaves like an endocrine organ. It disrupts insulin signaling, raises triglycerides, drives inflammation, and keeps your body stuck in storage mode. That's why people with a normal weight can still be metabolically sick. Now let me address the question everyone asks, can visceral fat be reversed in 30 days? The answer is yes, but not in the way most people think. You are not going to erase years of damage in a month, but you can dramatically reduce inflammatory activity, improve insulin sensitivity, shrink waist circumference, and change the trajectory of your health in 30 days. The mistake people make is focusing on weight instead of physiology. Visceral fat responds to hormones, not calories. You can eat less and still fail. You can exercise more and still fail. If insulin remains high, visceral fat will stay right where it is. This is why I focus on lowering insulin first. Insulin is the master storage hormone. As long as insulin is elevated, fat loss, especially visceral fat loss, is biologically blocked. You can fight your body all you want, but you won't win that battle. Reversing visceral fat requires doing fewer things, not more things. Eat less often, stop grazing, eliminate foods that spike insulin aggressively, allow your body to access stored energy again. This is how humans were designed to function. I'm going to walk you through what actually works based on physiology, not trends. I'll explain what you can realistically change in 30 days, what will improve first, and what takes longer. I'll also tell you what does not work, no matter how popular it is. There is one reason most people will not reverse visceral fat, even when they know exactly what to do. It has nothing to do with genetics, age, or metabolism. I won't tell you what it is yet, but by the end you'll recognize it immediately. So if you're considering the useful information, please watch this video till the very end, because half knowledge often does more harm than good. For now, understand this, visceral fat is reversible. Your body is not broken, but it does not respond to force. It responds to signals. The next step is learning how to change those signals, calmly, consistently, and intelligently. Before I go into the mechanics, I want to pause for a moment and share something personal. Over the years, I've had thousands of conversations with patients who were confused, frustrated, and overwhelmed by conflicting advice. That's one of the reasons I've been working on a book that brings all of this together in one clear, practical framework. It's not a diet book, it's not a motivational book. It's a physiology book written for real people, and it will be released soon. I'll talk more about it later, but I mention it now because everything I'm explaining here comes from that same foundation. So if you're interested in reading my book, please comment below the word book, and I'll know how many of you will be waiting. Now, let's talk about what actually starts to reverse visceral fat in the first 30 days. The first thing that changes is not your weight, it's your insulin. Within days of eating less frequently and removing processed carbohydrates, insulin levels begin to fall. This is critical. Visceral fat is exquisitely sensitive to insulin. When insulin drops, visceral fat becomes accessible again. That's the switch most people never flip. In the first week, the liver is where the biggest change happens. Most people with visceral fat also have fatty liver, whether they know it or not. As insulin falls, the liver begins to empty its excess fat. This improves glucose control, lowers triglycerides, and reduces inflammation. Many people notice better energy and mental clarity before they see any change on the scale. By the second week, waist circumference often starts to change. Pants fit differently. Belts need a new notch. This is not water weight. This is a reduction in visceral fat volume. Visceral fat responds faster than subcutaneous fat when insulin signaling improves. What's important here is that none of this requires extreme calorie restriction. In fact, aggressive calorie cutting often backfires by raising stress hormones like cortisol, which pushes fat right back into the visceral compartment. Calm physiology beats brute force every time. The core behaviors that drive these changes are simple. Stop eating all day, eat real food, remove sugar and refined starches. Eliminate vegetable seed oils, prioritize protein, natural fats, and fiber-rich vegetables. These steps lower insulin without stressing the system. Fasting plays a role, but it does not need to be heroic. A consistent 16 to 18-hour fasting window is enough for most people to start reversing visceral fat. The goal is not to suffer. The goal is to stop constantly triggering insulin. Exercise helps, but only when paired with insulin control. Resistance training improves insulin sensitivity and preserves muscle. Long, exhausting cardio without dietary changes does very little for visceral fat and often increases hunger and stress. By the end of the first month, many people see measurable improvements in blood pressure, fasting glucose, triglycerides, and inflammatory markers. These are signs that visceral fat activity is declining, even if the scale hasn't moved dramatically. This is where most people make their next mistake. They think they've fixed it and slowly drift back to old habits. And this brings us closer to the real reason visceral fat comes back again and again. If you're still here listening to me, comment below the word "Yes, I'm listening," and I'll know how many of you are still here with me. Now I'll explain the foods and behaviors that specifically block visceral fat loss, things people do every day without realizing how destructive they are. So let's talk about what silently prevents visceral fat from shrinking, even when people think they're doing everything right. These are not dramatic mistakes, they're small, habitual behaviors that keep insulin elevated just enough to block progress. The first is constant eating. Snacking, grazing, sipping calories, tasting food while cooking. These all trigger insulin. It doesn't matter if the snack is healthy. Almonds,